Hello, welcome to episode 5 of JavaScript for Intermediate Programmers. Today we're going to be looking at modules. A module is simply a file containing JavaScript code, and when you build a program up from multiple modules, you can have pieces of your program in different files that all work together to build something larger than you would like to put in a single file. We'll start with the simplest possible module and talk about the notion of importing and exporting and look at JavaScript's ecosystem for third-party modules called NPM. So let's get started with the simplest of modules. We're going to build command line applications like we did in episode 4. So we begin in an empty directory for projects, and I'm going to create two files here. One called stats will be a little module for statistics functions, and we'll create main.js, which is where our program shall begin. So let's bring up VS Code and begin with our stats module. So we could begin by writing a function to compute, what's a good statistics function? How about the mean? The mean, that's the average of elements from an array. And the mean is computed by taking the sum of the elements in the array and dividing them. Okay, VS Code is crazy here. I'm trying to use some, but I haven't created it yet. All right, so there we go. Well, we don't have the sum function, so we should create that. So how do we sum up the elements of an array? Lots of ways to do it. For loop comes to mind. But another approach is to simply reduce the addition function over successive elements in the array. So let's do it that way because that's, a little bit more fun. All right. The sum function is not really an interesting statistics function. The mean function is. So as we're building up our library, we'll export the mean function, but we won't export the sum function. So in this little module, we're saying, I'm building a library for other people to use. The mean function you'll be able to use, but the sum function will be private to the module. While we're at it, just for fun, let's put in another module here. Another function. How about the variance? The variance of elements in an array is found by basically summing over a, for each element, you subtract the mean, square it, and divide by the length. Let's get that written. So we'll sum over. We'll do a little mapping of x minus. We should do here. I guess we're going to be using the mean. So over a dot length. So let's just store the mean over here. Just another way to show how we can use each of our elements. Okay, so I built a little module. It exports two functions, the mean or average of the elements of the array, and the variance. The sum function here is going to be quiet. It's private to the module. Let's make the main. What do we should do in the main program? Well, let's just create some numbers. Numbers is, what are some fun numbers? Let's go with some Fibonacci numbers, because why not? And then for fun, let's just console.log the mean of these numbers, and we'll log the variance of the numbers just to get started. Okay. And we're going to get an error when we run this code, but let's do it anyway. Let's run main.js and we'll get an error saying mean is not defined because we need to import it. Just like we exported mean from this module, we're going to need to import it from here. Now, when you import from another module, it's going to go something like this. We're going to import from the other module, which is stats.js. It's in the current folder, and we'll name the folder like so. Okay, there's a reason why I used the /. I needed to say that this module is found in the current folder. The current folder is dot, and within the current folder we see stats.js. If you leave off the /, that means it's either a module that you've imported from a third-party repository or it's one of the Node built-in modules. If it's a module you write yourself, you have to use /. Okay, now stats.js actually exports a couple different things. And when you export multiple things, you import them with curly braces. There's a reason for that we don't have to get into right now, but we are going to import mean and variance. This is the syntax. So from stats.js, import mean, import variance. Again, mean and variance are exported from stats, and they are imported in here. We're still going to get an error when we run this, even though we've imported. The error that we're going to get says that to load a module, set type module in package.json or use MJS as an extension for can I use import statement outside of the module. Yeah, you might get this error, and this is because JavaScript is a very old language that's been evolving over time. JavaScript didn't really get a proper module system until the year 2015. Prior to 2015, the import keyword did not really exist. And, new languages, as they evolve, they want to make sure there's some way that they can continue to run old code. So JavaScript is telling us we have a couple different choices. We can rename these files to have an MJS extension. And we could do that really quick. Why don't we just rename main.js to be an MJS, stats.js. We can rename this. We can make this stats.mjs, enter that, and then we're going to import from stats.mjs, save that code, run it, and cannot find main.js because we renamed it to MJS. So let's run MJS, and we get our answers. Okay, so a lot of people don't really like MJS, okay, because, it's JavaScript. It should probably be called JS. So rather than using the extension MJS everywhere, there's another approach that allows you to keep your names of JS, right? And the trick here, if you want to do this, you create a new file called package.json. And within package.json, you enter the magic words type module. Right? Type module means that you're going to allow JavaScript to run in something called strict mode, where all those things that used to be silently nasty, weird stuff that used to happen in JavaScript back in the day now turn into errors, and some new functionality appears, like the ability to use import and export. So going back to JS here, we now have stats.js, and that's good, that's good. Nothing has to say MJS anymore. And we can run main.js, and with type module on our package.json, we still get a problem because what did I forget to do here? I forgot to save this file, of course. But now things run and everything uses JS. So to recap, our main program imports a couple of functions from the stats.js library that we wrote. In stats.js, we exported 2 functions, leaving 1 private. And there you have it. That's really all there is to it. There are some other fun things that we could try. For example, a lot of times you'll find yourself writing a module that has just one thing in it, or one very, very important thing, something like more important than everything else. And that is sometimes called the default. So if I were to make the mean function default, then it would no longer appear inside of the curly braces. It would be very special. So I'm like importing mean from stats.js. Now it's super important because it's the default and things still work. When would you use defaults? Well, it's not uncommon for a module to have just a single class in it. And if that's the case, you're importing only the class. You're just importing this one thing, And it just kind of looks better to say things like import Q from Q's.js or import React from React. Maybe you've seen that one before. So if you had a default, great. That can be done, and you don't need the curly braces. And again, that is if you export something as a default. All right. Let's now look at some modules that other people have written that we can use ourselves. And I found a handful over here that are pretty common. There's a module called Pluralize that exists in a global repository called NPM. Same with Chalk, same with Lodash, same with datefunds. These are really, really common and fun third-party libraries that you can grab. You can see the documentation for datefunds says, yeah, you can import functions like format and format distance and relative and sub days, and you can find out what day today is. Apparently it's Friday. You can format the distance from today and 3 days in the past, and it will tell you 3 days ago. And you can say, what did it look like, 3 days ago by using format relative, and it will say last Friday at 7:26. It's also internationalizable too, so it doesn't have to just be English. Lodash is a really fun library that just has zillions and zillions and zillions of functions that are kind of fun. Chalk is cool because you get to write, it makes your text have different colors, styles, inverse text underlines, background and foreground colors. And Pluralize is a nice little module that helps you find plurals and singulars of different words. Let's get them working. Now, if you're going to use modules from a global repository, you're probably going to use NPM. NPM has, I don't know, somewhere close to like 1 million modules out there. JavaScript's ecosystem with NPM it's just massive. I mean, you can just search NPM for anything you want. Search for cryptography, search for graphics, search for machine learning, search for whatever is interesting to you, and you can get tons and tons of code that's ready-made for you. If you're going to do that, if you're going to import packages from NPM, then a good thing to do is run, I'm going to remove package.json because you want to run NPM, which comes with Node.js. You want to run NPM init. And if you run NPM init, it's going to prompt you with some third things. What kind of project are you writing? What's the version number? What is it? And you can say example program for episode 5. You're going to run main.js? Sure, I'm going to run main.js. Not going to do any testing because testing's in episode 6. It's not attached to a Git repository. No keywords. Author, put it in if you're vain enough to do so. Take the ISC license or type in MIT, it's both good, and say yes. When you do npm init, okay, when you type in npm init, you get package.json created for you. I deleted my old package.json because here's the new one. It includes the responses that you put in for the prompts. But there's going to be, but the reason we did this is as follows. If I want to bring in a third-party module from NPM, like say Pluralize, let's start with date functions. I want to bring in date functions first. I'm going to do an npm install date functions, and it's going to go out to the npm repository somewhere on the cloud. It's going to fetch all the code for date funds, and you can see that it added it to my project's dependencies. It also created a folder called node modules where date funds got installed. What can I do with date funds now that it's installed in my program? Well, I can try out this script right here. Why don't we just grab it? let's grab all this code here because you know it's ready made, and let's drop it into main.js. We can do it after our main, and let's put our imports up at the top. And now you can see that if I npm install the module, I don't need to prefix it with the dot star. I don't need to give a relative path because this is not something I wrote and storing, you know, with the project. It's in node modules. It's a little different here. So let's save this code. Let's get rid of these comments because we don't know about those comments, and let's change things up a little bit. So format distance, let's see what was 10 days ago. And yeah, how about that? And let's run this and see if it works. So npm, not npm, but node main.js. Got some errors here. To load an ES module, type module. Okay, so if you do npm init, it's not going to remember that you need type module. In my opinion, that's a little bit of an oversight. That should have been automatic, if you ask me. But since you've seen this error several times, you know, you can see that it's common to make. All right. Looks like nothing got printed out here, so let's console.log these things. Console.log, all this good stuff here. Today is a E. That's kind of funny. I wonder what that means. We can find out by looking at the documentation. It's not that hard. And then console.log, because, you know, after all, I'm running this from a script. And yeah, today is Friday. You have the words 10 days ago, last Tuesday. So it's kind of this fun stuff, like what's this E, right? Well, if I just say one E, it looks like it says today is a 6. That's because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is the 6th day of the week. If I use 2 E's, then it says 06, meaning the 6th day of the week. If I use 3 E's, then it says FRI. And 4 E's will spell the whole thing out as Friday. Cool, right? I mean, there's some other fun things we can do. Let's and you can see that sub days, you know, made it 3 days ago. So, and you can imagine there's an add days. So let's get rid of these. And what do we do with add days? So this will say like, this is probably something like 10 days in the future. It says in 10 days, so something's coming up in 10 days. So date funds is pretty smart. You may commonly find yourself formatting actual dates rather than times. So here's something fun. Let's format the date. What's a new date? Let's make the date. Now, in JavaScript, it's a little weird, but in JavaScript, dates actually start with 0 is January, 1 is February, 2 is March. So if I want to do something like March 17th, it would fortunately look something like this. Perhaps you've heard of ISO dates in ISO format. If you have, you can see that, whoops, something's wrong here. I haven't imported format ISO. Let's make sure to import it because this is coming from date funds. So I brought in format ISO and run it, and then you can see 2021-04-17. So the ISO format shows the date with year and month and day, the letter T, and then the time with hours, minutes, seconds. And right now it's summertime in Los Angeles, so we're at GMT -7. So this is what you get, the ISO. Third month of the year. If 0 is January, 1 is February, 2 is March, 3 is April. I can do March 17th there. We can do December 5th. And if we want to say what is it? 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 2:07 in the afternoon. We'll say 14:07 format in ISO. And there you go, 14:07 on, oh yeah, how do you like that? It's 01 January because, of course, this being JavaScript, the 11th month is December. So if I went December 5th, there you go. I mean, I tried to say month 12, so that wrapped around to next year because dates are a little bit weird. If I want to format it in a slightly different form, I can just use plain format. And then with format, we can do some things like, I mean, you could do the American style date, right? The American style date is where you have the month first, and then they use a slash, and then they use the days, then the years. So if I want to get December 5th at 2:07 in the afternoon, let's just simplify things right now and just do the dates. Oh, got a mistake here. I don't have, oops, yep. There you go. We have to format the date with a format specifier. And there you go. So you got this weird American style date here, 12/05/2021. If you use 3Ms, you get, instead of 12, you get DEC for December. And then 4Ms, now we can get kind of fancy. And we have now December 05/2021. And you guessed it, if you don't want the leading zero, a single D will do it. So you can have all sorts of fun with your formatting strings. And that's pretty much all I have for date funds. Let's take a look at pluralize. So what do we have with pluralize? Here's a little module that lets you, sometimes you'll see this, by the way. Prior to 2015, JavaScript didn't have an official module system, so NPM gave the world this require function. This is a kind of an old style way of using modules. I wouldn't recommend using it, but it is the default for NPM. They call this module system the Common JS module system. You might see more. You might say this from now on, but don't worry, pluralize will work with the modern module system. Using that is using import and export. So basically, how do we do this? Well, you kind of just call pluralize and you get back some values. Now, pluralize has a default export to it. So what we're going to do for pluralize is we'll be able to say import. Whoops, before we do that, let's remember to actually install it. Remember, there's two things you do. You have to install to bring the code from NPM down into your system, and then you have to import it in your text to see it. So pluralize. Okay. Now that we have it available, did I get it? NPM install pluralize. Added one package. It's funny that I don't see it. Don't see it here, but in package.json, no, it's here in package.json. That's interesting. I kind of expected to see it right here. I have a sneaking suspicion that date funds already uses pluralize, but I could be wrong. And anyway, it's kind of interesting that it's not showing, but it is showing up here, and that's a good sign. So let's now import pluralize. That's a really hard word to spell. From pluralize, there you go. And then let's start using it. So let's write out here. Dang, that's really hard to spell. Let's pluralize goose, because goose has a funny plural. And let's pluralize, what else is there? Sheep. And well, while we're on the farm, let's go with cow, right? looking for geese, sheep, and cows. Let's see if pluralize knows its stuff. And it does, geese, sheep, and cows. It's doing some pluralization there. You can actually put in numbers because there are some words that have, the way they make the plural depends on the number. They might use a different word for having 2 of a kind versus 3 of a kind versus 5 of a kind and so on. In this case, there really weren't, but there's a nice option you can do in pluralize where you can specify true if you want the number attached to the value. So if I have 9 geese, putting true here lets me show the words 9 geese, like I've done here. And this can be somewhat useful. All right, so that's kind of it for pluralize. There is chalk. I mean, chalk is I think one of the most common of the the npm modules out there. So let's take a look at how these things work. Well, here's the simplest case where you just write some text in blue, chalked up blue, hello world. So again, it says chalk is required. Chalk, again, require is not the modern module system. Let's go ahead and npm install chalk. If you're going to be writing a text-based program, you're likely to be looking at chalk. Import chalk from chalk because it's a default. Chalk from chalk. And then let's copy this line from here. Let's just copy in the hello world. And we should be seeing it in blue if everything works out. So yep, it is blue. It's a little bit hard to see. Let's make the background yellow. So BG yellow. So yellow background, blue text. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. If you want to invert them, maybe it'll look better if we have yellow and blue, and got that wrong. Doesn't have yellow. Look at that. B for blue. Oh, that background. Oh, I want to say background blue. That's why I was getting everything. So chalk, background color blue, foreground color yellow. There we go. And if we wanted to bold it, we can put in some bold here, and we can look at all the fun things in the chalk documentation. I believe there's even an underline. It's kind of hard to see the underline if I take off the background color. Pretty good. Yeah, you can sort of see it underlined. There's other, there's a lot of interesting little variations you can have in there. If you look at the chalk documentation, you can see more. Look at this, even bold red. I think we did that. Keywords, so you can make up your own styles. There's even, here are some of the different colors that are supported out of the box. There's actually some fun stuff. You can pick your own RGB color. You can invert text. So whatever, I'm not sure what this color is, but it looks pretty appealing to try. RGB, so they put the dot there. Yeah, so this looks like it's lots of blue and it's kind of cyanish or something. No, it doesn't like this. What did I do wrong here? Chalk.rgb. Oh yeah, no dot here. Functions. Pretty cool use of JavaScript. Yeah, it's actually not that bad of a color. But you can do it in RGB. You can specify hex colors. You can specify the background in RGB. There's inverse. Inverse will flip the foreground and background colors. Chalk is pretty flexible. If you're interested in more, there's actually something called chalk animation, where you can do rainbow effects and put them on timers and things like that. All right, well, this video is getting a little bit long, and Lodash would have been the next thing to bring in, but I'll leave you to that one on your own. In fact, if you're going to do any kind of JavaScript program at scale, there's a very good chance that you are going to be using Lodash at some point. All right, so I'm going to stop here. We looked at how to create our own modules, the export-import syntax, the use of defaults, and as a quick reminder, Chalk and Pluralize did have default exports, whereas date functions did not. So both styles are important to know. We looked at Chalk, we looked at date functions, we looked at Pluralize because, well, those are pretty fun. So I will leave it at there. Thanks for being here. And if you're interested in episode 6, that will be pretty interesting. We're going to be looking at more fun stuff on the command line with Node.js. And then we'll take it to episode 10, after which time we'll learn a lot of very advanced JavaScript features as well as writing some programs in React. So see you in episode 6 if you choose to stick around. Have a great day.